Her name was Ada Fenwick, and on the day they buried the woman she had loved for 19 years, they put the servant's tray in her hands and told her to carry it round the room. The same room. 3 days before, in the blue bedroom at the top of Hartsbeck Hall, Ada had closed that old woman's eyes with her own 2 fingers. She had smoothed the sheet. She had sat with the body till it went cold, so it would not lie there alone. Now she carried tea, cup after cup, round a room full of people who would not meet her eye. She did not set the tray down. She did not weep, and across that crowded room, on the hand of a girl of 24, something caught the light. A ring, black enamel over gold, and woven under the enamel, fine as embroidery thread, hair, the dead woman's own grey hair, plaited into the band. A mourning ring. It had been made for Ada. It had been inscribed to Ada. The girl was Miss Clarissa Vane. She lifted her hand so the whole parish could see it turn in the light, and she said it plain, loud enough to reach the back wall and the 40 people standing there. A paid companion is not family. These are for family. 2 wounds, 1 breath. And over by the window, the Earl of Ravenscar set down his cup very quietly. He leaned to the rector at his elbow. He asked one small question, and it was this: did the jeweller in Newcastle keep his order book? But I will cut it there. For now, if you have ever given your years to a family that called you staff at the graveside, this story is for you. So before we go on, do this one thing: subscribe and stay to the end, because the end of this one matters. And tell me in the comments the town you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this story reaches. Now, let me take you back and tell it properly from the beginning. Start with Ada then, because you should know her before you meet the ones who wronged her. She was 54 the winter this happened, and she came into the household a woman of 35. 19 winters. You do not measure a life like that in wages, though wages were how it began. She answered an advertisement in a Newcastle paper. Companion wanted for the Dowager Countess of Ravenscar at Hartsbeck Hall in the parish of Wenshame. Genteel woman preferred. Steady hand for correspondence. She had a steady hand. She had little else. No people left, a small trunk, a good black dress kept for church. She travelled up the dale on the carrier's cart in October, and she saw the hall for the first time through a rain that never quite stopped, and she thought, I will stay a year and save and think what to do next. She stayed 19. The dowager was Honoria, Countess of Ravenscar, a widow already then, sharp as a needle and twice as quick to draw blood, in those first years. She tried Ada the way you try a horse you mean to buy, worked her hard, watched her close, said little that was kind. Ada wrote her letters, and folded her shawls, and read to her, and did not flinch. And somewhere in the second winter the old woman looked up from her chair and said, "You don't chatter." I had forgotten there were women who don't chatter. And that was the beginning of it. Understand what a companion did in a house like that. Ada was not a servant. The servants knew it, and she knew it, and yet she was not family either, and she knew that too. She lived in the between. She took her meals with the Countess. She slept in the small room through the connecting door, so that a bell need not be rung, so that a whisper in the night would fetch her. She wrote every letter that left that house in the old woman's name. She read the newspaper aloud each morning, the deaths first, because Honoria liked to know who had gone before her. She read novels at night, 3 chapters, never more, till the breathing in the great bed slowed and evened. She learned the old woman the way you learn a language. When the knee ached before rain, when the temper was weather and would pass, when the silence meant grief for the son who was always away, and when it meant nothing at all, only age, only tiredness, only the long afternoons. The son. I should tell you about the son. Edmund, the Earl, 42 now, and a soldier all his grown life. He was fond of his mother in the way of men who are fond from a distance, a letter at Christmas, a visit when the regiment allowed, and it did not often allow. He was abroad or in barracks through most of those 19 years. He was abroad through both of the last 2 winters, the 2 hard ones, the failing ones. He did not know his mother's house. He assumed, as such men do, that it ran itself. He never once asked who wound the clocks. Ada wound the clocks. And there was the hair work. That is a small thing, but hold on to it, because it comes back. The old woman had a mourning brooch, her own mother's hair, worked into a little plated oval under glass, from a time when such things were made by hand in every good house. One winter the setting cracked and a strand came loose, and Honoria wept over it like a child, which she never did over anything else. It could not be sent away, she said. She would not have a stranger's fingers in her mother's hair. So Ada learned. She got the trick of it from an old book and a great deal of patience. The tiny plating, the setting of the strands, the working of them close and even under glass. It took her a month of evenings and ruined eyes. She mended the brooch. And she was rather good at it, as it turned out. Good enough that the old woman took to watching her hands while she worked, and once said, in that dry way of hers, "You have a gift for keeping what would otherwise be lost." Ada thought it a compliment on the brooch. It was more than that. But she would not understand how much more until the day they buried her. Now, there was an autumn, the last well-autumn, before the failing began in earnest, when the dowager took a fancy to go into Newcastle. She did that sometimes. She liked the shops on Grey Street, and the fuss of the drive, and the being seen. This time she said she had a small errand of her own, and she said it in a particular way, but Ada thought nothing of it. Old women have their errands. They drove down the dale, the 2 of them, with the good rug over Honoria's knees, and it was a bright cold day, and the leaves were down. They stopped at a shop with a bow window and a name in gilt over the door. Ostler and Kerr. Jewellers, the dowager went in alone, waved Ada off when she moved to help her down, which was unlike her, and took the arm of the shopman instead. Ada waited in the carriage. She tucked the rug close around the empty seat out of habit and watched the street and thought about nothing in particular. It was a long errand for such a small one. Half an hour more. When Honoria came out she was pleased with herself in a way Ada could not account for, and she carried nothing, and she said only, well, that's seen to, and would not say what. Remember that half hour. It is the whole story, though Ada did not know it, sitting there with the rug over her arm, watching a dog cross Grey Street in the autumn light. Then came the last 2 winters, and I will not dwell long, because you can guess the shape of them. The old woman began to fail. The heart first, then the lungs, then everything at once, the way it goes. And in the second of those winters, near the end, the Vanes arrived. Mrs. Augusta Vane was the dowager's niece by marriage, and Miss Clarissa Vane was Mrs. Vane's daughter, and a great niece to Honoria by that same thin thread. Understand, in 19 years Augusta Vane had visited Hartsbeck Hall exactly twice, once for a christening that was not even in the family, and once when she wanted a loan. Twice, Ada could have told you the dates. Ada remembered every face that ever crossed that threshold, because she was the one who ordered the rooms made up. But now the old woman was dying, and there was an estate, and suddenly Mrs. Vane could not bear to be away. She came to help. She brought Clarissa to help. And within a week the girl had installed herself in the sick room as though she had a right there, and had begun, gently at first, to move things. The first thing she moved was Ada's chair. You should picture the room. The blue bedroom, curtains half drawn against the light, the fire kept high, because the old woman was always cold now, and by the head of the bed, for 2 winters, a plain chair. Ada's chair, set so close that Honoria could reach out in the night and find a hand there. That was the geography of it. That chair, that reach, that hand. Clarissa moved the chair into the passage. She did it kindly, that was the worst of it. "You must be so tired, Miss Fenwick. Do sit through there and rest. I'll read to Aunt Honoria myself." And she picked up the book, and she sat down in the warm place by the bed, and she began to read. She read badly. Too fast, and with no ear for it, stumbling on the long words, skipping where it bored her. Ada stood in the passage with her hands folded and listened to it, and it was like listening to someone break a thing that had taken years to make. And through the half-open door she watched the old woman. Watched her turn her face, slowly, away from the girl and the ruined reading, towards the wall, towards the door, towards where Ada stood, in the passage, in the cold, put out of her own place. Their eyes met, over the girl's bent head, and Honoria's mouth moved. No sound, just the shape of a word Ada knew well enough to read. Soon, no one saw that but Ada. There was no witness to the first wound but the one who took it, and she took it, and folded her hands, and said nothing, because she believed. This was her whole life's mistake, and I want you to see it clearly. She believed that dignity meant never asking to be counted, that if you were good enough, and quiet enough, and useful enough, you would not have to ask, that the asking was beneath a person. She had lived 54 years on that belief. It had never once been tested against people who simply meant to take. The old woman died on a Tuesday, before dawn, with her hand in Ada's hand and not the girl's. "I said I would spare you the winters, and I will spare you the death too, mostly only this." When it was clear the hour had come, it was Ada they woke. Ada, who was already awake, who was always awake in those last weeks. She sat by the bed. She held the hand. She said the small, true things you say. And near the end the old woman surfaced one last time, clear-eyed the way the dying sometimes are, and she looked at Ada and she seemed about to speak. And then she only pressed Ada's fingers once, hard, as if to say, "You have it, don't you? You have what I gave you." And Ada, who did not understand, said yes. Said, "Yes, my lady, I have it. Rest now." Meaning only comfort. Meaning, I am here. She would not understand what she had promised until the packet. But that comes after. First, the day of the death, and the second wound. By 9 that morning the house was full of the machinery of a death, the blinds down, the clocks stopped, the black already coming out of trunks as though it had been waiting. And in the morning room, at the writing table, where Ida had penned 1,000 letters, Mrs. Augusta Vane sat with a list before her, the list of chief mourners, the order of the family, who would walk behind the coffin, who would be named in the church, who counted. Ada came in with a question about the flowers and stopped at the door, because she saw her own name on that list, in her own hand, for she had begun the list herself, days before, when she still had a place in things. Ada Fenwick, it said, near the top, where 19 years had put her. And she watched Mrs. Vane draw a line through it. One line, left to right, unhurried and right, in the margin, in a hand like a knife, C to the T. "There," said Mrs. Vane, not looking up. "That's tidier. You'll want to be useful, Miss Fenwick, I'm sure, rather than idle among the family. You always were so useful." Ada said nothing. She crossed the room. And she did a small, strange thing, and only one person saw her do it. The little housemaid, Ellen, standing in the doorway with an armful of black crepe, who told it after to anyone who would listen. Ada picked up that crossed-out card. She did not argue. She did not so much as change her face. She simply folded the card, once, twice, and slid it up into her sleeve, against her wrist, where it would sit for 3 days like a splinter under the skin. And she went to see to the tea. Now hold everything you know. The 19 years, the plaited hair, the chair in the passage, the hand held at dawn, the card up the sleeve. Bank all of it, because here is the day it was meant to buy, and here is where they spent her cheap, in front of the whole parish. The funeral was on the Friday. They buried the Dowager Countess of Ravenscar in the churchyard at Wensholm, in the family ground, under a grey sky that spat rain the way it had the day Ada first came. The Earl had got home 2 days before, riding hard from the regiment, arriving grey-faced, and too late to see his mother alive, which is its own kind of grief, and I will come to what it made him do. He stood at the grave, the Vanes stood with the family. Ada stood at the back, among the servants and the tenants, because that was where the crossed-out card had put her. And afterwards there was the funeral tea in the church room beside the parsonage. A long, low room with a long table down the middle and windows all along one side, and 40 of the parish crowded into it out of the wet. The rector missed Sowerby moving among them, the Earl by the far window, silent, a man in a house of strangers who happened to share his name, and Ada with a tray. They had given her the tray at the door. Of course they had. See to the tea. So she saw to it. She went round that room, among people she had known for 19 years, people whose letters she had written and whose thanks she had penned in the old woman's name, and she offered them tea, and most of them took it and looked away, because a room full of people can feel a wrong being done, and still not one of them will be the first to speak. That is the truth about parishes. That is the truth about most rooms. And in the middle of the room stood Clarissa Vane, in her new black, being consoled. She had the ring on. Ada saw it the way you see a thing you have already dreamed. The black enamel. The gold. And under the enamel, the plait, she would have known that plating anywhere, she had done enough of it herself, she knew the very hand that grey hair had grown from. It was Honoria's hair. It was a mourning ring made of the old woman's own hair, and Ada had not known such a ring existed, and here it was, on the finger of a girl who had read badly for 1 week beside a bed she had no place beside. Someone admired it. That was all it took. Some woman of the parish, meaning only kindness, said, "What a beautiful ring, my dear, and how fitting." And Clarissa lifted her hand. She turned it in the grey window light so the ring showed, and she smiled her sad new smile, and she said it, not to the woman only, but to the room, in the carrying voice of someone who has waited to be asked. It was made for the family, of course, Aunt Honoria's own hair. There are others, I believe, but this one came to me. A little pause, and then, because she could not help herself, because the whole of her wanted it heard, a paid companion is not family. These are for family. And she let her eyes go, just for a moment, to the woman with the tray by the door. The room went quiet. But it was the wrong kind of quiet. Not shock, not taking of sides, only the held breath of 40 people who have all understood at once and are all, at once, deciding to say nothing. That silence was the worst thing in the room, worse than the words. Because that silence was the parish agreeing, or seeming to, and Clarissa heard it as agreement, and it made her sure. Ida stood at the door with the tray. Here is what she did not do. She did not shout. She did not weep. I told you at the start she did not weep, and she did not. Not there. Not with the tray in her hands, and 40 faces turned half away. She did not set the tray down and cross the room and say, "That ring is mine. I made the like of it with my own eyes ruined by candlelight. I closed that woman's eyes. I held her hand at dawn while this child slept." She said none of it. 19 years of never asking to be counted held her there like a hand on her arm, but something moved in her. Not rage. Ada was not made for rage. Something quieter and far more dangerous to the people in that room. Memory, she remembered the errand in Newcastle, the bow window and the gilt name, Ostler and Kerr, the half hour. That scene too. And she remembered, standing there with the teapot going cold in her hand, she remembered the packet. In March, near the end, on one of the clear afternoons, the old woman had pressed a thing into her hands. A packet, sealed with the black wax and the ring, the seal ring, that is, not the mourning one, keep them separate in your mind. a thick folded packet, sealed hard and heavier than paper alone. And Honoria had closed Ada's fingers over it with both her thin hands, and she had said, Ada could hear it now, word for word, across the crowded church room, "Keep this by you, my dear, and listen. If they ever question your place, when I am gone, if they ever say you were nothing to us, this is not for you to open. It is for my son. You put it into Edmund's hand, and no one else's, and you say I left it. Will you promise me that?" And Ada had promised, and she had put the packet at the bottom of her trunk, under the good black dress, and she had never opened it, because it was not hers to open, and because, this is the truth of Ada Fenwick, because she had not really believed the day would come. She had thought, they will not question my place. I have earned my place. Who could look at 19 years and question it? Now she stood with a tray in a silent room and watched a girl turn a dead woman's hair on her finger in the light, and she understood that she had been wrong about the whole shape of the world. That earning was not the same as being counted, that the counting was a thing other people did, and could refuse to do, and were refusing now, 40 of them at once, with their eyes turned to the windows. The packet was in her trunk, up at the hall, a mile off through the rain. She did not go for it. Not yet. Understand her, she did not think. Now I will fetch the weapon. She thought only, there is a thing the old lady gave me, and I did not understand it, and perhaps I begin to understand it now, and it was for Edmund, and Edmund is here. The thought was slow and cold, and it steadied her. She poured the tea. She went round the room. She let the wrong silence close over the words like water over a stone, and the day was not done with her yet. There was one more turn before her own, for as the tea wore on and the room thinned, Mrs. Augusta Vane got the Earl by the window. Ada, coming near with the tray, heard it. Mrs. Vane had a voice that carried when she wished it to, and dropped when she wished it, and she wished it low now, but Ada had spent 19 years learning to hear what was said quietly in that family, and the habit does not leave you. Only a word of business, Edmund, forgive me, at such a time. It is the companion. Miss Fenwick, a worthy creature, I'm sure, in her way, but you'll want the house settled before the will is proved, and that's 30 days, you know, the probate. It must all be done inside the 30 days, and it would be far kinder, would it not, to settle her now. A month's wages. A character. And let her go before the reading, before there's any awkwardness about expectations, these attachments, in old ladies. One never knows what a dependent has got into a failing mind. Far kinder, to be clear. Get her out. Before the will. Before anyone could read what a failing mind might have got into. Ada heard it all, standing 3 feet off with the teapot, invisible the way the tea tray had made her invisible all day. A month's wages and gone. 19 years and a month's wages and gone before the 30 days ran out. And the Earl, I will be fair to him, because he matters, and because he was about to matter more, the Earl said nothing to that. He was tired and grieved and freshly home to a house he did not know, and he had no reason yet to think Mrs. Vane a liar. He said only, there is time enough for that, and looked out at the rain. But he did not say no, and Mrs. Vane heard the not saying no, and was satisfied, and moved away well pleased, and as she passed the door she saw Clarissa there with the ring still on her hand, and something passed between mother and daughter, a look, a small nod, and Clarissa lifted her hand once more, unnecessary now, only for the pleasure of it, and let the ring catch the last of the light. At the graveside gate, they say, she did it again for the last of the mourners going out, turned the ring in the wet afternoon so the departing parish would carry the sight of it home. This one came to me. The account was fully open now, every wound dealt, and every one of them witnessed, the chair, the card, the ring, the low words at the window. 3 offences and a plan to be rid of her, all of it done in the light, before the parish, because the Vanes believed, this was their whole mistake, as never asking was Ada's, they believed the dead leave no witnesses. That a companion could be crossed off a list, that hair could be worn by whoever was bold enough to put it on. That silence meant agreement. They did not know about the half-hour on Grey Street. Ada finished the tea. The room emptied to a few, and she stood at last by the long table with the tray gone light in her hands, and she made, quietly, without a word to anyone. The way she had done everything for 19 years, she made her decision. She would not cross the room and claim the ring. She would not stand among them and cry out that it was hers. That was the row, and the row was theirs. On that ground they would win, because they always won on that ground, in that county, where blood spoke and the paid help did not. She would not fight them for the ring with her hands. She would put a thing into the Earl's hand instead, as she had promised. It is for my son. You put it into Edmund's hand, and no one else's. She set the tray down on the long table, softly, so the cups did not ring. The first thing she had put down all day. She smoothed her apron. She drew the folded card from her sleeve, the crossed-out card, warm from 3 days against her wrist, and she looked at it once, at the line drawn through her name, and she did not tear it. She put it in her pocket. She would want it kept. And she went out into the rain and up the path to the parsonage door, where the Earl of Ravenscar and the Reverend Mr. Sowerby had stepped in out of the wet to speak of the burial's small businesses. She knocked. She was let in. She stood before the two of them, a woman in a black dress with rain on her shoulders, and she did the thing she had promised a dying woman she would do. She took the sealed packet from inside her bodice, where she had carried it, warm since dawn. For she had fetched it that morning after all, from the bottom of the trunk, under the good black dress, without quite letting herself know why. She had carried it against her heart through the whole of the burial and the whole of the tea. The black wax was unbroken, the old woman's seal. She laid it on the table before them, between the Earl and the rector, and she said the only words she had said all day beyond, "May I offer you tea? My lady gave me this in March, my lord. She bade me put it into your hand, and no one else's, if ever your family should question my place." A breath. They have questioned it. I have not opened it. She said it was not for me. She said it was for you. The Earl looked at the packet. He looked at the seal, his mother's seal, that he would know anywhere, and the rain came against the window, and somewhere down the path Clarissa Vane was still wearing a dead woman's hair on her hand, and did not yet know that a mile of everything had just turned on its hinge in a small room she was not in. Edmund put out his hand to the wax. He broke it. The wax cracked under his thumb, and a small black flake of it fell to the table, and the rector leaned in without meaning to, the way a man leans toward a fire. Edmund unfolded the paper. It was 2 sheets, folded once and covered close in a hand he knew before he read a word of it. His mother's hand, smaller than it had once been, the letters leaning where the pen had dragged. But hers. He read it standing. He did not sit, and Ada watched his face and could not read it, for a soldier's face is trained to give nothing away, and this one gave nothing. The rain went on at the window. When he had read it twice, she counted. It was twice. He set the sheets flat on the table and pressed them with the flat of his hand, as if they might rise. "Mr. Sowerby," he said. His voice was low. "My mother writes here of an order she placed, in Newcastle, at a jeweller on Grey Street, Ostler and Kerr." He looked up. "Ada. There was an errand. Last autumn. October, she says here. She drove to town." "Yes, my lord." Ada's hands were folded before her. "I went with her. I waited outside with the rug over her knees. 1/2 an hour, perhaps. She said it was a small errand of her own. I thought nothing of it. She says here it was 8 rings. He looked down at the page again. 8 rings, 8 names, 8 inscriptions. She says she had them made, and she names each one. And she says, he stopped. He read it off the paper exactly, so that no man could later say he had softened it. She says, kept against the day they will say I did not mean it. The rector said nothing. He was a careful man. He was already thinking, Ada saw, of the register in his own church, and of what a register was for. My lord, Ada said, I did not open it. I do not know what is in it. I only know she gave it me in March, and told me to carry it, and I carried it. I know you did not open it. He said it plainly. The seal was whole, and a woman who wanted to forge her mistress's wishes would not have carried the proof unopened for 4 months in her own bodice. He folded the letter once more and put it inside his coat, against his own heart now, where it had been against hers. But a letter is a letter. My cousin's mother will say my mother's mind was going. She has been saying it since the coffin closed. She will say a companion could write any list she pleased and call it her lady's. She will, said the rector quietly. I have heard her begin. Edmund went to the window. He stood a moment with his back to them both. Then he turned. Then we will not stand on a letter, he said. We will stand on the book. Every jeweller keeps his order book. My mother knew it. She tells me to ask for it. Here, in her own words. Ada, is Bellamy still at the hall? He is, my lord. He came down for the burial. He is in the yard with the horses. Then Bellamy rides tonight. He was already moving. To Newcastle. To Grey Street. He is to bring back not a copy, not a note, but the book itself, in the jeweller's own hand, or the jeweller with it. I want the page that was written last October, before my mother took to her bed, before anyone in that room down the path had a thought of a ring. Let them say what they like about a companion's list. Let them say a word against a bound book kept by a stranger in a shop 40 miles off. He took his hat. Say nothing of this. Not to my cousin. Not to Mrs. Vane. Let the tea go on. And that was the cruel, delicious thing of it, and Ada felt it settle in her chest like a coal. The tea would go on. Down the path in the warm church-room, Clarissa Vane would go on holding up her hand and letting the black enamel catch the light. Mrs. Vane would go on nodding at the 40 faces of the parish. And they would not know. For a whole night and half a day they would not know that a man had ridden out into the October dark to fetch the one thing that would take the ring off that finger. Ada went back to the tea. She carried the tray. She said, "May I offer you tea?" And Clarissa, seeing her, lifted her chin and turned her hand a little on the cup so that the ring showed, and said, not quietly, "Thank you. The companion is being so useful today." And 2 of the parish laughed, the small ugly laugh of people who are not sure they should. Ada poured. She said nothing. She had a night to wait, and she had waited 19 winters, and she could wait a night. The steward rode. Ada did not sleep. She sat up in the small room off the back stair that had been hers for 19 years and would be hers, she supposed, for a month more, and she took out the crossed-out card and smoothed it on her knee. The line through her name. She did not weep over it. She had not wept once. She only kept it, the way you keep a receipt. Morning came grey and hard, and with the morning came trouble, as trouble always comes ahead of the thing that mends it. For Mrs. Vane had not been idle. Mrs. Vane, who in 19 years had come to Hartsbeck Hall exactly twice, had a nose for a shifting wind. She had seen the Earl leave the parsonage with his mouth set. She had seen Bellamy take a horse in the dark, and by breakfast she had gone from house to house in the village, in her good black, with her soft voice, and she had planted her seed. Ada heard it from Ellen first, who had it from the baker. They're saying, "Miss," Ellen twisted her apron. They're saying the old mistress wasn't herself, at the end, that she'd say things and not know she said them. And they're saying," the girl's face went red, "that any list a companion writes out, a companion could have wrote to please herself. Mrs. Vane's saying it kind-like she's sorry for you." "I know how she says it," said Ada. "Thank you, Ellen." So there it was. The letter, that had felt like iron in the parsonage, was already going soft in the village air. A dead woman's wandering mind, a serving woman's convenient hand, said kindly, said with a sorry face. That was the worst of it, that it was said kindly. You cannot strike a kindness, it has no edge to catch. And for the length of that grey morning, Ada let herself believe it might yet go their way. It always had, in that county. Blood over service, the relation over the record. She had seen it all her life. Why should the sky change for her? It was Friday. The parish gathered again at noon, for there were papers of the burial to be signed in the church room, and the rector had asked them, and Mrs. Vane had made very sure the room was full. 40 faces, or near it, the same 40, the long tea-table down the middle, and the grey window at the end of it, and the same cups, and Clarissa at the head of them with the ring on her hand, and her mother beside her, soft and sorry and sure. Ada stood by the door with the tray. Where else? And then the yard gate went, and there were boots in the passage, and Bellamy came in wet to the knee and 40 miles hard, and behind him, blinking, in a good coat and a bad temper at being fetched so far, a small precise man with ink on his fingers, Mr. Kerr himself, of Ostler and Kerr, Grey Street, Newcastle, and under the steward's arm, wrapped in oilcloth against the rain, a great flat book. The room did not know yet what it was looking at. Mrs. Vane's soft face went a little still. Clarissa turned her cup. The Earl stood up. "Cousin," said Mrs. Vane, quick and smiling, moving first, always first. "This is a house of mourning, not a counting house. Whatever paper your steward has ridden for, surely it can wait upon my aunt's poor body being cold. To bring a tradesman here, she let the word fall gently on the little man from Newcastle, among family, on such a day. Let him choose blood, mamma," said Clarissa, and her voice was high, and she was 24, and had never in her life been made to give a thing back. She held her hand flat on the table so the ring showed to the whole room. "I'll not take it off, not on the word of a servant, whatever book she's coaxed out of a shop. My great-aunt loved me. This is mine. Let anyone here say it isn't." And for one held minute, Ida felt it, the whole room felt it. It read as though she had won. Because she was blood, and she was young, and she was crying now, prettily, and the parish shifted in their seats, and blood over service was the oldest law that county knew. The Earl let the minute stand. He was a soldier. He knew the worth of letting a thing stand until it grew too heavy to hold. Then he took the oilcloth off the book himself, and laid it flat on the tea-table under the grey window light, and opened it. And he put one finger on the open page, and he looked, not at Clarissa, and not at Mrs. Vane, but at the 40 faces of the parish. And he said the only hard thing he said all day, "The hand here is my mother's, gentlemen, not mine, and not Ada's." He turned the book a quarter so the nearest men could see the page for themselves. I only read it. "Mr. Kerr, is this your book?" "It is, my lord." The little man was nettled and 40 miles tired and entirely honest, which is the most dangerous thing a witness can be. My own binding, my own entries. That page there is October last. The lady came to my shop herself, Grey Street, 2:30 of a Tuesday, I have the hour, and she gave me 8 names off a paper in her own hand, and she watched me write every one before she'd leave. I remember her because she would not sit. She stood the whole half hour. She said an order like this a woman ought to stand for. The room was very quiet now. It was the right kind of quiet. At last. "Then I will read them," said the Earl, as my mother wrote them. "And I will read them all, so that no one may say I read only the one that suited me." He read the first. "To Edmund, my son." A plain ring, the book said, gold, his father's hair. He did not pause on it. He read the second, a great-aunt of the house long dead, and the third, a cousin in Kent, and the room began to understand that these were the family rings, the proper rings, the ones no one would ever dispute, and that he was reading them first on purpose, laying them down like coins, 1, 2, 3, so that when he came to the one in question no soul in that room could cry favour. Fourth, fifth, each a name, each a lock of hair named, each an inscription set down in the jeweller's careful column and dated October, months before a single vein had thought about a ring. Then the sixth. He did not hurry it. He put his finger on the line, and he read it exactly as it stood in the book, in Mr. Kerr's hand, off Honoria's own paper. The sixth ring. Black enamel over gold. Grey hair. Plated. The lady's own, set in the band. Inscription within, to Ada Fenwick, who stayed. He lifted his eyes then. Only then. And he looked down the length of the table at his cousin, at her flat hand and the black enamel catching the grey light. "And that, cousin," he said quite gently, "is the ring on your finger." Nobody in that room breathed for the space of it. Clarissa's face went first white and then a deep, mottled scarlet, the colour climbing her throat in a way no powder could have hidden. She looked at her hand as though it had betrayed her, as though the ring itself had crawled onto her finger while she slept. Her mouth opened. Nothing came. She looked to her mother, and her mother would not look back, and that was the moment the girl truly understood, when the one face she trusted turned aside. Her fingers went to the band. They fumbled at it. Grief and pride had swollen her knuckle, and the ring would not come, and she pulled at it there before the whole parish, with her breath coming quick and wet, twisting it, hurting herself with it, because there was nothing else in the wide world her hand could do in that room but get the thing off. It came at last over the knuckle. She did not set it down. She could not seem to set it on the table with all of them watching. So she put it into the Earl's open palm, because his hand was there, held out, waiting, and it was the only hand that would take it from her without a word. Mrs. Vane recovered her voice, of course. Mrs. Vane would recover her voice on the deck of a sinking ship. She gave a small, light laugh, a laugh with no bottom to it, and she spread her gloved hands, and she said, "To the room, to no one, to the air, well, a mere confusion of the settings, plainly, the rings so alike, and the poor child grieving, anyone might have mistaken the one for the other. My aunt herself would have been the first to laugh at the muddle. No one answered her. That was the whole of her answer. No one answered her." The Earl did not turn his head. He looked back down at the book, and he put his finger under the 7th line, and he read the 7th name into the silence her sentence had left, and then the 8th, calm, unhurried, and her little laugh died out unregarded in the corner of the room, the way a match dies when no one shields it. She had built a thing out of soft words in 19 years of soft words, and she watched it come apart in the length of one man reading a list, and the reading did not even pause for her. And the 40. The 40. Ada watched them and would remember it to the end of her life. 40 people who 3 days before had let a small ugly laugh go round when the companion was handed the tray. 40 people who had sat on their hands while a girl held up a stolen ring and said a paid companion is not family. She watched the whole machinery of it swing round in a single minute, watched them lean, one by one, away from the head of the table and toward the door where she stood, watched the shame move across the room like weather. The baker's wife had her hand at her mouth. Old Mr. Harrow was nodding, slow, the way a man nods when a wrong is set straight in front of him and he is glad and ashamed together. Not one of them met Clarissa's eye. Not one. And then the Earl did the thing that Ada had not expected, the thing that undid her when the ring and the reading had not. He did not call her forward. He did not hold the ring up and bid her come and fetch it across the room like a servant fetching a dropped glove. He closed the book. He came round the long table, past his cousin, past Mrs. Vane, the whole length of it, to the door, to where she stood with the tray still in her 2 hands, because no one had thought to take it from her, and she had not thought to put it down. He stopped in front of her. He was 42, and he had been away with the regiment through both his mother's last winters, and he had a debt he had been too absent to pay in life. And he knew it, and it was in his face now for anyone to read. "Set the tray down, Ada," he said. Quietly, just to her. She set it down on the little side table by the door. Her hands were steady. She had made sure they would be. He took her right hand in his. And there, in front of the whole parish, in the grey light from the window, he put the black enamel ring onto her finger, the ring made for her, with the old woman's own grey hair plaited into the band, the ring that said within it, where only she would ever read it, to Ada Fenwick, who stayed. It went on easily. It had, after all, been made to her measure. She meant you to have it, he said. She stood half an hour in a shop to be sure of it. I was not here. I should have been here. He held her hand a moment longer. You have my mother's thanks, in her own hand and her own hair, and you have mine, for what it is worth so late. Ada looked at the ring on her hand. 19 years. The letters she had written for a hand that could no longer hold a pen. The chapters she had read aloud into the dark until the old woman slept. The 2 winters of broth and blankets and the fire kept in all night. The morning she had closed those eyes with her own 2 fingers because there had been no one else in the house awake to do it. All of it. Banked, come round at last to rest on her hand in a black band no wider than a wheat straw. She did not weep even then. But her breath went out of her, all of it, in a long, slow way, like a woman setting down a weight she had carried so long she had forgotten it was a weight. Thank you, my lord, she said. That was all. It was enough. The rector was already reaching for the parish register. He had brought it into the room that morning, and Ada understood now that he had brought it on purpose, careful man, having smelled which way the wind would set. He opened it on the table where the order book had lain, and he took his pen, and he found the page of the burial of Honoria, Dowager Countess of Ravenscar, and he found the line where the chief mourners were entered, the line from which 3 days before, Ada's name had been struck by another hand. With your leave, my lord, said Mr. Sowerby, and before these witnesses. A parish register is a record too. And a record ought to be true. He dipped the pen. I enter, among the chief mourners of the departed, the name that was wrongly left out. Ada Fenwick. Companion, he wrote it. He blotted it. He turned the book so the room could see the wet ink. There, it is in the book now. It will be in the book in 100 years. And Ada thought of the other card, the crossed-out card in her pocket, warm still from her own body, her name struck through by Clarissa's hand, and she understood that it no longer mattered what that little card said, because the great book said otherwise. And the great book was the one that stayed. The parish went home to their suppers and took the story with them, and a story like that does not walk, it runs. By dark it was in 3 villages. It went along the lanes ahead of the men who carried it. It went into kitchens and over hedges and down the length of the valley, and it changed a little in the mouth of each teller, as such things do, but the bone of it never changed. In the next parish, at her own hearth, a farmer's wife who had not been in the room and never would be told it to her husband over the fire, and she put it the way the whole county would come to put it, without ever quite knowing she had coined it. In Wenchel now, she said, ladling his broth, the record outranks the relation. That was the thing they carried home, not a scandal you enjoy and forget. This was a precedent, a small hard rule dropped into the county's water, and it would not dissolve. The record outranks the relation. 40 people had watched it proved, and 40 people are a great many mouths. Back in the church room, when they had all gone, and the fire had sunk to a red eye, and the grey window had gone black, Ada stood alone. The Earl had gone up to the hall with Mr. Kerr, and the great book, and the letter, and the whole cold business of a will to be proved within 30 days. Only the rector stayed, tidying his register, in no hurry. The way a good man lingers when he thinks another might want company and be too proud to ask for it. Ada took up the tray at last, out of habit, the tray she had carried 3 days. And then she stopped, and she looked at it, and she set it down again for good. She would not carry a tray in that room again. She lifted her hand instead. She turned the ring to the last of the firelight. She looked at the plait of grey hair worked into the band, the old woman's own hair, that Ada herself had learned to plait one winter, sitting by the bed, so she might mend the mistress's own mourning brooch when the setting failed. She had learned the craft to serve the living woman. And the living woman, saying nothing, had used that same knowledge to bind a keepsake for the day she would be dead. The old fox. She had planned it all. She had even chosen the hair. She always did keep her accounts, Ada said. Dry to the rector, or to the fire, or to the empty room. Mr. Sowerby closed his register. She did, he said. And she knew, I think, exactly who would try to alter them. That was the truth of it, and Ada carried it out with her into the dark. The dead leave lists precisely because they know who will lie about them. Honoria had not made those 8 rings out of sentiment alone. She had made them out of foresight. She had spent the last clear autumn of her life standing half an hour in a Newcastle shop, watching a stranger write 8 names into a bound book. Because she knew, she had always known, that when her voice was gone, someone would stand up in a warm room and say she had not meant it, and so she had put her meaning somewhere no soft voice could reach it. In ink. In another county. In a stranger's honest hand. A year turned. There is a cottage at the edge of Wensham Parish, low and stone, with a rose grown wild over the door. Rose Cottage, and the deed to it in the name of Ada Fenwick, free and clear, and £45 a year paid to her quarter by quarter, on the day it falls due, never late, for the Earl of Ravenscar does not keep a debt waiting twice. It is morning in October again. A year to the season. Ada takes her tea on the step, in the thin good sun, and the ring is on her hand where it has been every day since he set it there. Beside her on the step sits the mourning brooch she mended long ago, the one with the old woman's mother's hair under its little dome of glass, hers now, willed to her plainly in the proved will, along with the cottage and the annuity, all of it beyond the reach of any vein forever. The county still says it, when the matter of some grand house comes up and some poor servant is done out of their due. In Wensham, they say, the record outranks the relation. Ada has heard it said in the market by people who do not know she is the woman it was made of. She lets it be. A precedent belongs to everyone, or it is worth nothing. Of the others, there is little enough to tell, and Ada tells it to no one. Clarissa married, they say, and married abroad, somewhere south and warm, where the story had not travelled, and a girl might begin again unweighted by a ring she gave back before 40 faces. Mrs. Vane sent, that first Christmas, a card. A soft, well-turned card, in her soft, well-turned hand, hoping there was no lasting unkindness between them and trusting dear Ada was comfortably settled. Ada read it once. She did not answer it. Some letters answer themselves by the fact of your silence. And there was one more letter, which Ada keeps. It came in the spring, before Clarissa went abroad, a single sheet, blotted, honest for once, a young woman's clumsy apology with no gain in it, and nothing asked. Ada read that one too. Once she did not burn it, and she did not answer it. She keeps it in the drawer of the little table by her bed, folded together with the crossed-out mourner's card. The card with her name struck through, the two of them lying quiet side by side. the wound and the sorry for it. She keeps them the way you keep any account you have settled, not out of anger. For the record. Because that is the whole of what she learned in 19 winters at Hartsbeck Hall and one clear morning in a church room. There are houses where the loudest blood in the room decides who is family and who is staff, who is counted and who is struck out, and there had been such a house and such a county all her life. And then there is the other kind. The kind when Chaumet became on the Friday a soldier laid a bound book flat on a tea table and read 8 names into the silence. The kind of house where the record decides, where what is written true stays true, though every soft voice in the parish should swear against it. Ada Fenwick finishes her tea. The rose nods at the door. The ring warms on her hand in the sun, the old woman's grey hair plaited close in the band, and inside it, where only she will ever read it, the 4 words that outlasted them all, to Ada Fenwick, who stayed. If you have ever given your best years to a family that called you help at the very door you kept, tell me the county, or the country, you are watching from. I would like to know how far this one has reached.